Hi everybody and welcome back to StashBlaster Quilts. It is Quilt Camp Day 1 Session 2 that we're doing live. This is a sit and sew, so I don't have a whole lot of things planned. I do have multiple projects that I want to work on. Unfortunately, the quilt camp I was supposed to go to this week, 3 days of fun with my friends, was pushed to next week because of the weather. It is starting to snow out there, and here in Virginia, the concept of snow is terrifying enough that everything shuts down. So they've pushed it, and I can't do next week. So I decided to keep these 3 days for myself to work on the same projects I would have worked on at camp, not what I normally work on here. So we're going to just do this as a sit and sew. You are welcome to put comments into the chat. Let me know what you're doing, etc. You can also email me at mail@stashblasterquilts.com. This is this is this is my number 3 camera that you're looking at here. Hi, and this is the one that aims down at my machine, and it's the only one working right now. So that's why you're getting kind of this odd presenting of me at the moment. But hopefully you'll have a good time, and let me know if this is something you want to have continue. I have gotten requests, so I'm going to do this for these 3 days, and we'll see what happens. But normally it's just the live streams the first and third Wednesday of the month from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So that's where we stand at this point. I'm going to put my headphones on because if I play what I want to listen to, I have copyright issues. So you're just going to hear the sewing machine is basically it. Some have told me that's very calming and peaceful as they watch the fabric go through the machine. So that's completely up to you whatsoever. All right, have a great day, and I will catch you up later. Bye. Okay, so now I'm just changing out the plate. The plate that I have in here is a single hole plate. I'll show you that in a second. I'm going to go back to the standard plate because next I'm going to be doing some zigzagging. Okay. So you are hearing voices potentially from downstairs. That's my husband and my office assistant. She is leaving for the day. So I don't know what's so funny, but it is. So that's all that really matters. Okay. So I'll go to the back. Okay. So this is the single hole. Oops. Let me see if I can. There we go. So right here. So you can set one or the other. The plate I'm putting in now has the usual slit. So I'll be able to zigzag. So that's why I'm putting in this plate. But in the meantime, this is all full of lint. So I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to use a couple of old paintbrushes that I have. And I usually clean this out whenever I change my thread. I probably won't this time. The thread in my bobbin, whenever I change my bobbin. Just because with it being this camp thing, I want to do as much sewing as I can. But I am going to get all of this while I can. It's just a regular paintbrush here. This is not to replace a real cleaning, but every bit of this that I can get out is all to the good. So I'm going to get further down in here. Oh, there's a lot down in there. Maybe I can get in with this other brush a little better. Nope. Well, there's quite a bit, but it's down in where it's hard to get to without taking the whole thing apart, which I really don't want to do right now. So I'll get what I can now, and then next time I'll get the rest. That's a nice big chunk. If you take your brushes in this case, to your machine whenever you change your bobbin, then it's less likely that you're going to have mechanical problems later from either overheating or other issues. So it's always good to just, even if you only do a little, every little bit is more than you did before, is all to the good. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for right now. And so I keep my brushes over on the side in a makeup stand holder. So all of my little things with handles. Oops. I had to turn around backwards. That shows you how smart I am while I'm talking. Go into that really easily, which is nice. Okay. Come on. I'm just putting in this other screw, the one here in the back. I'm not very good at remembering what you can see and what you can't from your position. This is not normally the camera angle I would use, but when you're down to one and this is what you can do, this is what you do. So I'm just snugging these down. Don't tighten these too far. If you do, then you just have a fight to get them out later. And it takes quite a bit to have them wiggle their way out. I just saw here I missed this little section, so I want to make sure I got that. Okay. Now the machine itself should be cleaned at least once a year by a professional. They can check your timing, they can do all kinds of other things. If you sew a lot, then you might want to consider more often. Some people track how many hours they have on their machine in between cleanings. I generally don't, honestly. I do the once a year game. Just makes my life a little easier. Okay. All right. Now, I am going to be doing... Oh, I had a scrap from earlier, and now I can't find it. I'm going to be doing a zigzag, and I don't know exactly what size I want yet. So I need to do a quick test. But I'm not seeing my fabric scrap that I wanted to use. Not that I don't have 8 million fabric scraps around here. Don't get me wrong there. I just had one that I had torn off a piece of a piece before, and now it's gone. Alright, so, there it is. It fell into my trash can. Kind of like I thought it belonged there. Okay, so I'm going to just take some black thread that I have. I just put black in the bobbin. This is a cone, but works just fine. This is not the thread I'm going to want on the top for this next piece. It's just to decide on the width of my zigzag. So it doesn't really matter what color thread I used. In fact, normally I would have used white, but I didn't happen to have white as handy as I have this black. Alright, so it's giving me a little bit of an issue. A little moisture. Cut a new tip. My machine does have a threader, but for some reason it only works about half the time. So I don't even think about using it most of the time. Oh, I just saw a big wad of fuzz on my uptake. So let me get that off of there too. There we go. Okay. And now let us snag that bottom thread. There we go. Okay. And my bobbin cover. Alright, let's look at the machine. So, basic zigzag is number 8. So, mode 1. number 8 is zigzag. Okay. And we are at 1.5. Okay, it looks like a good width, but that's way too far apart for what I want to do. Actually, I'm at a 5 for the width. Okay, that is basically the satin stitch that I want. But in the process, as I went, it got tighter and tighter. Let me try for a wider stitch. That's better. I had to kind of pull it through. So what can I do with this? So I just dropped the feed dogs. I'm going to see what happens with the satin stitch here. Yeah, it's getting stuck just as much. Still not super happy with that, because I'm going to have really thick materials. See, I don't use this, I don't use okay, zigzag. For most people, zigzag is not a fancy stitch. For me, I hardly ever use it. So what I'm doing is I'm doing tactile quilts. And they're different in that I have put them on a 2-inch grid, these materials, and the zigzag is actually what's going to hold it down to the backing material. And so it being a good solid zigzag is super important. So this was supposed to be an experiment, and an experiment it shall be. But I'm going to give it a try with this and see if it will give me enough that I can accomplish what I'm trying to do here. Okay? I had somebody who was going to help me with this during camp, but again, camp is canceled, and I still want to give this a shot. But these are all different materials. Well, I can't say none of them. Some of them are actually quilting cottons, but for the most part, no, not so much. not the best. But let's see what happens as I go. So just as if I was quilting, I'm going to take a couple of stitches because I want to keep changing my upper thread. I want to keep changing the colors. And so I started with that black because the black is what I was testing with. But I have a whole bunch of these little sewing kit spools. And so that's what I'm going to use to do all this decorative top stitching. AKA my zigzag. Now normally I would have put these onto a bobbin, which these come to about a half a bobbin's worth, or I would have spun them out onto a card. And if you don't know what I mean by those, you can drop me a note and ask, or you can go back to some of the early live streams that I did when I was piecing the underwater quilt. I talked about that kind of stuff a lot. But for those of you that heard it several times at that point, I don't want to bore you now. Now these thread exchanges are going to be a pain in the tail, but it's only the top that's being changed, so it could be a lot worse. Well, I am normally a fast sewer, sewist, as I've been hearing lately. I really can't in this case, so this is going to be a long, drawn-out process. So this is actually two fabrics together. This top one is sheer with these black velvety sections on them, which is what I wanted for the texture, but given the fact that it was so sheer, I put another piece of material under it in black just to give it something to give it that solid background. It's starting to run a little low. So I think I'm going to keep going anyway. Even if I'm changing mid-blocks, it doesn't matter in this case. So this is a fur, it's super thick. So what I want to do is make sure it's under the foot and all of the fur is pulled off to the side so as to not mess up the zigzag. Tweezers here. This is being a bit of a challenge, but it's worth a shot, right? Wow, this pink fur is really hard to work with. But it's going to give them lots of texture, which is the idea. Oh, ran out. Okay. Oops. Up and down and around, through. And it's not that late in the day, but boy, I am not at my best today. Of course, very little sleep, well, doesn't help. overall not too bad. There are spots, obviously, that are a little thin, like in through here. This is kind of bad. This didn't catch this edge at all. But when I do the stitching the other way, yeah, you'll be able to tell, but it shouldn't be too bad. So, alright, it is kind of meandering, but worse things have happened. First time I'm giving this a try with these multiple textures. I'm not too fussed about it. I think it's going to be okay. Alright. It is surprisingly uncomfortable, but that's alright too. I'm going to have to do some stretches here. But I think I'm going to try to use up the rest of this little spool, because it was only a partial one and it's one of these little baby ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do every other one of these, because that's going to anchor the pieces down onto the flannel backing regardless, and then I'll do the ones in between, because these things are lifting even though they're basted down. I tried to put them onto a fusible web, but they are so thick that they did not properly adhere, which is a shame, but it does work. So I'll call it good enough. Enough of it adhered, and enough of it it held on just long enough for me to put the basting stitches in. So I can't argue too much. Okay, so I'm going to go over, here we are. Okay, so I'm completely looking at the wrong hand. Okay, so this is the one I just did, black into yellow into hot pink. So now I'm going to go over 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to do this row down, which does have some tougher material, like this upholstery fabric, and there's an even tougher one towards the end, but although this is fuzzy, it's nothing like that other pink one, so it should go a lot easier this time. Okay, so I'm pulling my bottom thread up to the top, just like with regular quilting. This is not going to be a quilted piece. This is just going to be the 2 layers. There is no batting of any kind in this, so it is technically not a quilt, which is why I've been calling it a mat. But more importantly, for the people with dementia that do thread tracing, it'll be nice that they can do it from either side. So if they don't like the front, they can still do it on the back. The back is all going to be in black, for those that don't like a lot of color. But this should work pretty well. Oh, you can't see because I moved things around. No, you still can't see it particularly well. I'm sorry about that. Alright, I'm just going to take a quick look at this. Looks like I've got another one I can do. Now, I'm horrible at judging threads, so odds are decent that I got this wrong. But I think I have enough for one more 2-inch section. Oh, we're iffy. Oh, let's give it a try. Again, I'm not too worried if it switches mid-block. That's an advantage here. I do want this to be incredibly colorful, and there's the added advantage that I can take any of my old bobbins that are partials, and it doesn't matter if there's only a little tiny bit on them, I can do this with it. And use them up. Normally I'd spin it onto my cards when they're really low, but this is another option. Especially for the ones where there's not much left, but not quite a small enough amount to spin it onto cards. Okay, I'm gonna stop there, I think. Nope, it says keep going, so let's keep going. But it is definitely going to change colors partway through this block. Yep, I can see the end of my thread. I am not going to finish this, but it's going to be close. Oh, I stretched it out. Yes! I pushed it a little far. Again, I'm only trimming the top thread. I'm only changing that. So, where'd my scissors go? There they are. Matt keeps... let's put it over here so I can push it off to the side. So, that is all the thread that was left. And it is enough that I'm going to spin it onto a card later. Because that's basically... oh, let's see how much it is. It's about 10 inches, which is enough to do a little bit of sewing here and there. Alright, so now I pull this out of this. And I'm going to tuck it under and back. Okay. Now I need a new color. Oh, let's go green. I do appreciate that they have so many different colors of these, but almost nobody ever uses them. So it's kind of a shame. But in this case, I will be. Okay, so that is the trailing end. So what I'm trying to do here is get that pulled out. I don't always like coming off. Oh, to keep these things from just jumping off my machine, I do have one of these for my machine. And you put this on top of the spool, on the spool post, and it will keep you from having the thread just jump right off the post, which happens a lot with these little guys, particularly if you sew quickly. Just don't press it down so hard that it slows the uptake of the thread. Okay, that did not thread right. I could feel it when I did it. Okay. See, my needle was not at the highest position it should have been at. There we go. Okay. Which meant that when the thread went through the tension discs, it felt tight, which it shouldn't do. So if you notice that, then just give your wheel a little bit of a pull, and it should straighten out. Actually, I think I'm going to drop my tension a little bit too. That may help with this zigzag. Alright, now I'm just threading the needle. And setting the needle. I'm going to hold this top thread here into the back, so that it doesn't get sucked down in and create a bird's nest for me. I could keep it off on the right hand side, but since my needle's on the right, I'm going to keep it on the left, which I know sounds weird, and I'm sorry. Okay. I moved it off to the side. All right. Okay. Well, I have to say that I'm getting better. This is a much smoother line. I am a bit of a speed demon, so this going as slow as it does is driving me a little on the batty side, but that's okay. You only learn when you do. So, I think I did a lot better on this green one. You can see here on the red, when I was getting nervous about running out of thread, it got really scant because I was pushing it while pulling it through from the back. So this goes to show me that nope, that's not going to cut it. The green here is all really nice and smooth. And it's not perfectly straight, but it's fairly straight. So, good job on that, Maria. Okay, so that was also the end of that thread. I do have what's left in the machine. Oh, this is longer. This is about 24 inches. So that's another bundle to keep and spin onto a card. I just realized I probably should do the spinning anyway, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Because for some of you, this craziness that I'm doing today might be your first time seeing me. So let me just cover this real quick. I'm just going over to one of my walls over here and getting my bucket of cards. I started doing this because I had picked up one of those sewing kits where there's like a dozen different threaded needles in the kit, and I thought that was a great idea, except I didn't wear almost any of those colors. So what I started doing is when I get to the ragtag end of a spool, I spin them onto cards like these. Now some of these are professionally made. They came from sewing kits or embroidery kits. And some I just made by putting little snips in cardstock, sometimes from like a cream cheese box or something like that. But I do have them basically by color. So let me pull out here. I have that pink. Where's my green? Here's my green. And so when I was hand piecing the flowers from the flower garden I showed you earlier, like this one, I got as close as I could on the color of my thread. Now, not the basting stitches, where my nail is. Here's this thread I sewed with. Just to make it a little less likely that you would be able to see the thread on the front. So I did that with all of these little tiny little pieces that I had. Now I have taken these little thread spools before, and sometimes not so little. Sometimes I would use the next size up ones. So for comparison's sake, oops, there's my thread. So here's the little one, and here's the next size up. They're next to each other. This would take up several slots. So I would occasionally do it with these as well. You can tell this one has a black gap here. There's not a whole lot left here. I'll probably spin it onto a card soon. When it comes to spools like that, I usually will spin it onto a bobbin first, because a lot of times when I'm sewing, I don't care what the bobbin color is. I don't even care what the top color is. So I can just go ahead and grab whatever and make it work. So that's always a good option. So in this particular case, this is a big card, but you'd be able to see it a little bit better. All I'm going to do is wrap the thread right around it like this. Oops, lost my end, but I've got a little slit that I put in the end of the card there, and poof kazak. Now the advantage to this is I do speak internationally at conferences, and so I can just take the cards that have the thread for the clothes that I'm wearing with me, and then I always have some sewing anyway, so I always have needle, thread, thimble, a couple of buttons, that kind of stuff with me anyway. So this is a very convenient way, and I can take a ton of different colors and not have it take up a lot of space in my sewing kit. If it's super tight, I can just take an empty card I would use one that had more slots on it. So, for example, okay, this is a commercial one. You can see here has 5 slots. But I have been known, when I make them, to make a lot of slots. There's not a set amount in each pairing. It was until it looked about right. But I could take an empty card and just put the colors that I'm going to have all on one card. So there's lots of advantages. When I was sewing all of those flowers, I could take a mishmash of them, and I knew I had colors that matched, and just go to town and do it. Could I have used one color thread for everything? Sure. Could I have just taken the spools instead? Sure. I have a ton of spools of thread, I have a ton of bobbins of thread, and then I've got these cards. Now, I could have also thrown this thread out. A lot of people do. When they get down to where it's, running low on the bobbin, a lot of times people just throw that thread out. They would not have kept this small amount of thread. But to me, I am, well, you could call me cheap. That would be fine. But I hate wasting. I hate having things go into the landfill that don't need to. So many of our clothes and fast fashion items just wind up in the landfill. And so, yeah, it's only a little thread, but it also means I'm not buying a lot of thread. It also means I'm not throwing it away and having it be in the landfill. So I feel better about doing this as a way to prolong the life of the thread and to use it up as much as I possibly can. It's why I cut my strips as narrow as 1 inch, and anything narrower than that goes into my chip blocks. I use every little bit that I can to save money, but also to save the landfill. I really hate how much stuff goes out in the trash, and so anything that I can save, I do. These little zip bags I've had for years. And while I could store this in a really pretty container, this is an old M&M's container that we got at Costco when I was sorting M&M's for my son's teachers when he was small. I would sort them by colors and then put them in holiday-themed jars like snowmen and that kind of stuff. But I would layer them in by color. And so I sorted out a lot of M&Ms because that was back before you could buy just blue or green or purple M&Ms. So, so these containers are square. Square containers fit better on shelves. I keep this kind of stuff. I do not keep an excess of this kind of stuff, though, and that makes a difference. So when you see repurposed trash in my sewing room, when I do the big tour, it's mostly just as a way to make the best use of my space with what I already have and not going and purchasing a lot of new things. I think at some point I am going to move to wooden boxes that I've collected over the years. So these might move there instead, but they're not there yet. Unfortunately, this cough I've had for over a year now. I got it when I got COVID, and the doctor told me that it could be 18 months to 24 months for it to go away. So, unfortunately, you guys have to listen. And so I'm sorry about that. Okay, so a little bit of a wrap up on what I've done so far today. I have gotten a whole bunch of the strips for the king size quilt stitched. I don't know if I have enough yet. I have to see, and then I may need to cut more strips. That's what I ran out of. I have the colored strips, but not the background strips. So I didn't count them when I cut them. I just cut them and rolled them. So that was me trying to make sure I was done in time for quilt camp, because I was doing that like 2 days ago. So I've got a bunch of them sewn, and so they will all be pressed. About half of them are currently. And then I will trim up the top edges and make sure I'll have my 12.5 inches. And then I will start sewing my strip sets together to make my rows across. And then after that, I will subdivide those into strip sets, and those will go into the master king size quilt. But I'm going to do it in such a way that I will also be making twin size quilts at the same time. Normally I do multiple quilts all at once. You can do up to 4 at a time. And then when you cut each strip set, you put one from each of the giant strip sets in each quilt. And then you have one row that's different from all the other rows. And that's what I normally do. But in this case, I don't need 4 king size quilts. And I wanted to use some of my smaller scraps of material. Smaller strips. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 9 of the back of the color strips together with an extra background. That's twin size. And then I will do a 5-piece strip set as well. And then when I cut out that 9-piece giant strip set, when I cut out my rows, I will be able to use one for my king size, and then one will go into a charity quilt. And I hope that that makes more sense. It'll probably make more sense either tomorrow or Thursday when I'm actually assembling everything. I'll be able to show you on the design wall. So at that point, things should be a little bit different and make a little bit more sense. But I have gotten a whole bunch of that sewing done. I have tested my theory on the texture quilt, and so I think I'm probably going to do another couple rows of that before the day is over, but I may not have it on film. And I have sorted the flower garden flowers that don't have arcs on them yet into the piles with the ones that do have arcs on them, so that I can start laying them out on the design wall. That's going to be a whole lot of looking at my tushy, which I doubt you folks are interested in. So I am going to start doing some of that now. So I'm going to close this, and then tomorrow I will be prepared to show you what I accomplished, and we can go from there. Okay, so thank you so much for coming to session 2 of Quilt Camp Day 1. And we've got 2 more days of Quilt Camp coming up. So thanks a bunch, and I will see you tomorrow.